You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. Oh. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do. One of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do.
Day and night.
Hello,
And what God expects him to.
NRM Streamcast, and we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course, I will answer as many as I can. Or you can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course, I will answer as many as I can. Or you can check out our webpage at letstalktorah.net. That's letstalktorah.net. The archives are there, the new shows are there, questions and comments, and of course the all-important donate button, which we appreciate every time somebody hits that button, and of course leaves a donation. That helps our show continue to grow, and that's pretty much why there aren't no advertisements around here. So all that is greatly appreciated. Please go to that donate button. Whatever you can help us with is always greatly appreciated. We have different levels. You want to shout out, you want to be anonymous, whatever you'd like. Again, we do thank you in advance. And of course, we are back in the top 3 of the top 10 in FeedSpot's 10 best Jewish book podcasts. So we are back at the number 3 level. Again, I don't really know exactly how they figure out these numbers, but we are happy to be at number 3. It's the summer. In case you haven't noticed, the weather is gorgeous. Summer is just that time to slow down, relax, be alone. I know that's scary for some people. Be alone with your own thoughts. Look at the flowers. Just enjoy. Just slow down. It's just such a good time where hopefully you're not as pressured, you're not as much of a rush. Maybe the kids are out of the house because they're in camp. Maybe they're making you crazy because they're all home and they're bored. But it's just long days. Find that time. Just get away. It doesn't have to be anything major, right? Like, you don't must go on a vacation, and then when you come home, you're so tired from everything you did on the vacation, you need another vacation. Just go relax. Dip your toes in the lake or in the ocean. I mean, come on. You got to get out there. And, of course, listen to my podcast while you're out there relaxing. But no, really, it's okay to be alone with your thoughts. It should not be a scary thing. It's really fantastic. So we really got to catch up the end of last week's Torah portion so we can understand what exactly is happening in this week's Torah portion. So we're going to back up. So last week we talked about how Balak hired Bilam to curse the Jewish people. And that did not work very well. God did not allow Bilam to curse the Jewish people. He tried 3 times, didn't work. But before Bilam leaves, he gives Balak advice. And he says, their God of the Jews hates, the word is Zima. Zima just means promiscuity is probably the best English word that we would look for, just to sleep around with any lady you can imagine. God hates that. So Bilam says, you go ahead, you get these Jewish people to hang out with all your prostitutes, and their God will get mad and kill a whole bunch. And it was a great plan. What actually happened was they set up some type of tent city, and they had it was like a market. And you came and you went to the marketplace, and there'll be a lady, and they'll invite you inside, and then there's a naked girl in the back, and she'll bring you to the back, and And she'll first bring out her idol and say, "You want to sleep with me? Now here's my idol. Bow down to my idol." And that's what was going on. And God gets angry, and he tells Moses, he says, "Get your courts ready. Anybody who served idols has to be executed." Why didn't they execute the people who were promiscuous? Because that really the court doesn't have the power to do unless it was an illicit relationship. But just a prostitute, the Torah may not like it, but there's not an official death penalty. So the tribe of Shimon is complaining to their leader, whose name is Zimri, and says, "Hey, leader, do you see we're all getting killed over here, and you're just sitting in your tent doing nothing? You got to protect us." Okay? So Zimri goes ahead and he takes a princess from Midian. So you guys see, these people were so ready to cause destruction to the Jewish people. Even the kings of Midian, there were really 5 like leaders, or I don't know if they had a title of king, but whatever they were willing to give their daughters over to be taken by anybody. Like, come on, like, what kind of people are you? In any case, so he takes this girl to Moses. He says she's permissible, not permissible, and it says Moses and the elders were crying, and Zimri went to basically publicly sleep with this girl. So I had a lot of confusion when I was going through this. Like what's going on over here? Like, Moses killing the idol worshippers, not the ones that are being promiscuous. So what's Zimri helping by doing the same thing everybody else was doing? He's not doing idol worship. So I asked the big rabbi. He says, I missed the boat, which is par for the course. When you speak to big rabbis, you see there's so much more. I think there's so much deeper, but really clear. He says, the problem was not the idol worship. And Jewish people don't do idols. They believe in God. The idol is just because the only way you're going to sleep with this lady is you're going to bow down to her idol. It was what we call znus, the promiscuity, the just the sleeping around. That leads to everything bad. And Bilam understood this. In other words, the idea is the guy who wants to sleep around and just have any girl he can get his hands onto, he is so steeped in his personal desires, he has no control. He just, I want it, I take it. That lewd kind of attitude leads to everything bad. As once you can do that, then you do whatever you want. It's my desires. I want the pleasure. I'll do anything for pleasure, whatever it takes. So I don't need God. I need my pleasures. And what happens is there are a few areas in life we find this. We talk about it with hatred. It happens with love as well. If I really hate someone, my brain stops working. I'm not going to think properly, correctly, to think, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? If I hate someone, I'm going to go out of my way to do whatever I could. I'm going to destroy that person, like, even if it doesn't make sense, because my brain is not really working. And by the way, if I tremendously love somebody, I will do anything for that person, even if it doesn't make sense, because that's what love does. Abraham was willing to sacrifice Isaac because he loved God so much he couldn't help himself. I always tell my class this story when I was in 11th grade. I had a very good friend, and this friend did not have that many other friends. I don't know if it was a social issue, but he was my friend. And one time we were walking up the stairs, I get up to the 3rd floor, hang a left down the dormitory, and a guy jumps out from behind an alcove and he throws a cup of water at him. My friend turns around and decks him. I mean, he just knocked his lights out. The guy got 7 stitches from it. He really... And the guy's on the floor, and I'm yelling at the guy on the floor, you deserve it, you shouldn't have done that. And I tell my friend, run for your life. So a few days later, when the guy comes back to school with his eye all bandaged up and his stitches, he says to me, he says, Tzvi, why did you yell at me? Like, what did I do wrong? The guy's name was Shirley. I said, Shirley, you didn't do anything wrong. I said, but I had to protect my friend, and you were going to kill him. So, therefore, I figured if I yell at you, you'll just stay down, and my friend can get away, and, we won't have an all-out war. And over the years, as I think about it, I totally missed the boat on that story. The reason I yelled at that guy is because my friend can do no wrong. And now with this thought, it's even deeper than that. In the human psyche, when you truly love someone, when you have a friend, spouse, someone who you love, that person can do no wrong. You don't think straight and say, well, this really wasn't such a good thing. You shouldn't have punched the person. No. The one you love is right. The one that attacked the person you love is automatically wrong, even if it doesn't make sense. That's what I did. And over here, it's the same concept with this person who must get every desire and pleasure that he wants. That person is not thinking properly. Okay, you want me to bow down to the idol? Just let me sleep with you. Yeah, you want me to do this? No problem. Because he just wants his desire. He has no control over anything. So that's what was going on. That's what Bilam understood. You get them to sleep with all these girls, their God hates that, and there'll be a plague. And there was. It's a question how many were killed. Many, many, many thousands died in this plague. The question is how many thousands, but a humongous number. So Zimri goes to Moses to stop the plague or the killing. He says, Moses, it's almost like Zimri felt like, Moses, you're doing this on your own, right? You're just making this up. Like, what exactly is wrong? I'm not saying it's the nicest behavior. I'm not saying you're an outstanding citizen. But what are they doing wrong? That they all deserve to get killed? Like, Zimri is also missing the boat on this one. So the problem is, even though it should have been an easy answer, that it's not enforceable by court, right? But there's no answer. How am I supposed to tell you that you're throwing everything away because of your attitude? I saw this recently. They talk about, character traits are not actually written in the Torah. I mean, we can learn character traits from different personalities in the Torah, but there's no official command because, first of all, the idea of working on my character traits is endless. I can always improve. There's no end to that. And every generation has their different issues with what's a good personality, what's not a good personality. There's just no way to write it down. So what am I supposed to tell you? That the way you're acting leads to total destruction of what the Jewish people stand for. Moses couldn't even explain it. Like, if you don't get it, you don't get it. And perhaps that's why the only person who can take care of this is a zealot. Translation of zealot is someone who is, forget about the, modern day. I mean, there's a reason why it's against the law to take the law into your own hands, which is what a zealot does, right? A zealot goes ahead, and in this case, Pinchas is going to execute on his own Zimri and this princess Cosby from Midian. So the reason, we hope, the reason that you can't take the law into your own hands is because a regular, normal person is not trusted to be doing what we say, l'shem shemayim, for the sake of heaven. It's impossible. Everybody has ulterior motives. So yes, 90% of me says, you hope, that you're a rotten person and you deserve to be executed. But 10% of me says, I don't really like you anyways. Or you did something to me the other day. Or I like the idea of killing somebody for free and not paying for it. to be 100%, I'm just doing it because I love God and I know this is what God wants, you got to be an angel for that. Now, Pinchas was a great person. So he could be this once in a forever zealot, but a regular person can't. So you can't take it into your own hands because you're going to end up doing whatever you want and you're going to blame it on being a zealot. So we say that a person can't do. So Pinchas goes to Moses and he says, isn't the law that if a Jewish man is sleeping with a non-Jewish lady, I could execute her if I'm a zealot, if I'm that 100% for God and nothing else. So Moses says, you said the idea, you do whatever you want. So Pinchas carries out the execution and the plague stops. Now, what's fascinating is, so at the beginning of this Torah portion, God is now rewarding Pinchas. He says, Pinchas, you were jealous for me, and now I'm going to give you my treaty of peace as Brisi Shalom. So the whole thing doesn't make sense. The kanoi, the zealot, is somebody who's using violence to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. The person who does shalom, the person who does peace, that's not violence. Now, by the way, Pinchas, who becomes Elijah the prophet, by the way, it seems twice in history he was able to be a zealot and execute. Otherwise, the rest of his life is all peace. You know, it's interesting. The zealot, again, we're really talking about one person in history, is loved by God, but he needs to know he's hated by people. He is just so strict and over the top, and there's no room to bend, right? So that person people can't tolerate because he's unbending. And he's the opposite of peace. So they say, you want to be a zealot? That's for your own personal stuff. You want to be super strict? Be super strict on your own. But for everybody else, you're going to have to come on to peace. Which leads to another interesting thought. If you have the chance to look at a Torah scroll this week, you will see that the letter Vav in the word shalom, it's basically a straight line letter, there's different ways of making it, but either there's a razor blade line through that Vav on the bottom. In some places, the whole bottom of the Vav, but I think that's not the way it's done. Usually there's a line put through it. It's called a Vav Ketur. It's the only place the Torah demands this. But it's actually written as a letter that's been messed up. Normally, you're not allowed to do that to a letter. Letters can't have cracks in them and lines in them. A letter has to be complete, except for this Vav. So I saw a few thoughts, which maybe perhaps the Shalom has a broken Vav, right? Because it's coming from Pinchas. Pinchas was a zealot, and he's supposed to be the man of peace. His peace is broken, right? It's incomplete. I saw another idea. The Vav becomes like the letter Yud twice, so the word becomes Yashlim, which means to make peace. You know, you have to work on making peace. You have to actively make peace. If you want to make peace with somebody, you can't just sit back and say, "Okay, I'll be nice to him." You got to go out and work on it. The difficulty we all have sometimes with different people, especially people who get on our nerves and people who make excuses that we're not happy with. The reason for that is because no two people are alike. We're all different. In some way, forget about how we look, forget about how we act, but even our nature, what makes us tick, what we enjoy, what we don't enjoy, there's nuances, and everyone is different. I saw Victor Miller said, why why are shidduchim? Why, getting a boy and girl together, that they should like each other and create a beautiful Jewish home? It's difficult to be a matchmaker. It's difficult to make matches. Why is it so hard? He says it's so hard because God makes each individual person, and each individual has his and her individual needs. So but God made these two individuals, and now he wants them to be together. Well, the only way they can be together and work together is if all the little pieces fit together. That's not so easy. It's hard. I just imagine if I order a car, see, it's made in a factory for the most part. Right, so I go to the dealer, I want this car, I want this color, I want this leather seats. But then it's all when they put it through the conveyor belt, when they put it in the factory. So the factory knows, okay, this car's getting this leather seat and this color paint, and it just goes through the factory. How hard could that be? But imagine that you went in to order a car, but you said, oh no, I can't have those seats. I need a totally different kind of chair. They don't make it. And even in the chair, there's multiple details. That steering wheel, no. We need a different shape. We need a different feel. No, those wheels, no. The axle I needed from a different car company. Just imagine if the thousands of pieces that a car is made from, you wanted each one from a different style, company, location, and you're putting together the whole thing. It's doable, right? But it's going to be a huge effort, right? And just imagine God making people. So each of us with our own individual needs. If you think about it this way, we all, as that fancy word, we all have our own idiosyncrasies, right? We're all different in that way, right? So, yeah, why are you fighting with everybody, or anyone for that matter? Because the person's not like you, and you're not like anybody else. We're all different. Our goal is to figure out how to all get along. That's the goal, right? Is once you understand that I can't make you like me. And they even say in marriage, if the spouse, husband, wife is trying, if the goal is, when I get married, I'm going to fix him or her. It's not happening. It's not happening, right? You are who you are. We can become better. We can become a better person. We can become more caring. We can have better attributes. But my idiosyncrasies, you're not ripping those out. That's who I am. And if you understand this, it's easier to be friendly with someone. Because I'm not trying to make you into me. You're you, I'm me. And leave it at that. That, by the way, leads me to another idea. That vav that we said is broken. So somebody says, better a broken piece, right? Shalom means peace. So the letter vav is broken there. Better a piece that's broken, meaning an imperfect piece is always going to be better than an outright fight. So what happens is that God gives Pinchas his treaty of shalom. The fact of the matter is that fighting, war, killing affects people. It goes into my soul. It makes me a different person. So Pinchas just executed somebody. It does something to the soul. So God has to change his soul. He has to give him a special blessing. He has to give him a special blessing of peace. He also has to protect him from Zimri's tribe, that they shouldn't want to execute him, to take revenge. Also, by the way, it's like shalom is one of the words we use to say hello. So when God says, I'm giving you my brisi shalom, it's like God saying, you're my friend. Hello, how are you? On another level, so Sam Shafal Hirsch explains like this. Peace is between man and God. When the Torah talks about shalom, what is shalom? There is, of course, there's something important that people should be at peace, but the peace we're talking about is creating peace between God and man. To do that, you can't compromise. Right? When somebody says that they're a pacifist, right, then that means you surrender to evil. In other words, that's not what God wants. There always is a peaceful solution. Unfortunately, there isn't always a peaceful solution. Sometimes you need war. Sometimes you need to fight. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but you need to understand that even shalom, the Torah's version of shalom, means that sometimes we're going to get back into this because it's really an important thought. And I think in the next show we're going to try to talk about it a little bit more. But in any case, the music is playing. Hope you enjoyed it, short and sweet. Thank you, of course, wonderful sons and listeners. I can't do it without you. Thank you, the production team. We have Alan in the back today. I hope I've left you some food for thought. Until next time, I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson. You've been listening to Let's Talk Torah on NRM Streamcast. Until next time, don't forget to think about it.
There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special things I compile, each one there to make you smile.
You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, God expects him to do.
Day and night must scramble for
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Torah. I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson with NRM Streamcast, and we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course, I will answer as many as I can. Or you can always go to our webpage at letstalktorah.net. That's letstalktorah.net. The archives are there. The new shows are there. There's a place for questions and comments. People would like to join the show. You can leave us your information. We'll get back to you if you want to join the show. And if it'll work out, that's always fun. And of course, as we've been mentioning lately, we are still number 3 in the top 10 in FeedSpot's 10 best Jewish book podcasts. So we're happy to be all the way up there at number 3. That would seem to be a good number. You know, I guess top 10 of anything is probably pretty good. I mean, I hope anything important at least. And of course, on the webpage, don't forget to hit that donate button and help the show continue. You help us continue. You take care of our costs in the studio and pushing us out there so people get to experience what you enjoy listening to. So in the last show, I didn't get to finish my thought. And it's a really powerful thought, so I'm just going to rehash it a little bit and clarify and see how we can understand it. So we're talking about peace. And the reason we're talking about peace is because Pinchas, the zealot, the one who executed a leader of a tribe and the princess from Midian to stop the plague, is called a man of peace. So it's hard to connect. How could I be a man of peace if I murdered somebody? I'm not saying soldiers don't have a most important job, but you wouldn't call them peacekeepers. Even though they know over time they have soldiers that are on borders of different countries and they call them peacekeepers, but really they're war keepers, right? In other words, their goal is that if someone wants to fight, we're going to fight. Okay, by fighting, we maybe create that you can't, go into my country so people are safe. But what's the idea of peace? So Samshel Hirsch explains peace in the Torah, the idea of shalom, the concept, means creating peace between man and God. Yes, it's very, very important that people have peace amongst themselves, and husbands and wives should be at peace, and parents and children, there should be peace. All this, of course, is very important. But the peace over here in the Torah, The Torah is referring to peace between man and God. The man of peace creates a relationship of peace between man and God. What does that mean? So we explained that if a person says, I am a pacifist, right? He has a policy of peace at all costs. Such a person is surrendering to evil. I mean, just look what's going on, right? In other words, it should be obvious without, we don't want to get the politics of everything, but all those countries that are saying, oh, make peace with Hamas and don't worry, just make peace. I mean, just make peace. They attacked my country, killed 1,200 people, took hostages, raped and pillaged whatever they get their hands on. Like, what do you mean, make peace? It doesn't even make sense. Stop shooting, right? It may have to make a ceasefire because why? Because you're a pacifist. So a pacifist means that you're surrendering to evil. Well, give in to the evil. Don't worry. It won't be so bad. As long as it's not, your kids. It won't be so bad. You can't always use peace. You can't. Sometimes there has to be war. And the war will lead to peace. That's fine. But you have to understand, the peace between man and God means that you can't compromise on what God wants. If we know that God wants ABC, whatever it is, I can't compromise on that. How can you? I know God wants me to keep the Sabbath, but how about, once a month I'll try to go to synagogue? Who made this compromise? Who said this works? How did you decide that God wants compromise? He doesn't want compromise. So that's who Pinchas was. Pinchas understood, and that's what a zealot, even though, again, the last show really discussed the concept that a zealot is something that's, once in a forever. That you can have a person that is totally doing something for the sake of God, so he understands right and wrong, and he understands that sometimes there can't be peace. Right? That the idea in next week's Torah portion is because Midian basically sacrificed their girls to all become prostitutes, so that created this humongous plague that killed many thousands of Jews because they were sleeping with all these girls. So God says, get an army and go wipe out Midian. So people could say, how could God say kill out that whole country? That's not acting peaceful. Because you missed the point of peace. Peace is creating a bond between man and God. Midian, and you want to know the details of this. This is the last show. So Midian put the Jewish people in a spiritual danger. Their whole plan was to cause a rift between God and the Jewish people, right? God, who hates promiscuity, that you have to fight. You have no choice. You have absolutely no choice. That's something that you have to fight, and that's what Pinchas understood. Just to finish up this topic, it was the tribe of Shimon that had the most people killed. That's what it sounds like, at least when you look at the census, which we're going to talk about momentarily. And the leader of the tribe, Zimri, he's the one that publicly took that princess of Midian to sleep with her. So it is interesting because Shimon is the one who puts his life on the line to wipe out the city of Shechem because Shechem raped his sister Dinah. It was Shimon and Levi. They were the ones that said, how dare you rape a Jewish girl? And they wiped out that city of Shechem. So Shimon is willing to put his life on the line so there should not be promiscuity. And along comes technically his descendant, and he does the opposite. You almost have to wonder how that's even possible. It is interesting. It's possible, even though Zimri is the leader of the tribe of Shimon, it's quite possible he's not a real descendant. You see, Dinah, Shimon's sister, said she's not leaving Shechem's palace unless Shimon agrees to marry her. Okay, brother and sister, before the Torah is given, it's really not a nice thing, but it doesn't mean he really married her. I mean, I'm sure there's different opinions, but one opinion says, in other words, he took care of her as if she was married to him. Live in his tent, take care of her, protect her, no problem. But she became pregnant from Shechem, from that rape. And that child goes by different names. It started out Shaul ben Aknanis, and some say he became Zimri. So it's Dinah's child. It's perhaps not really Shimon's descendant. So it's a possibility at least. In any case, okay, that was just to finish up some of the stuff we talked about in the last show. I just wanted to just clarify and finish that thought. So at the beginning of the Torah portion, there's a new census being taken. It's the end of Moses' life. Moses took the Jewish people out of Egypt, and the counting was 600,000, 603,000. And again, it's debatable. Was it all the males, 20 to 60? Was it only those that were eligible to be soldiers? Debatable. And now that Moses is at the end of his life, right? We have the war with Midian, and then Moses will have a month left to his life. So Moses returning is like returning the army, right? You gave me an army, and now I'm retiring. In this case, Moses is going to die, and he's returning the army. So he's going to return the army with the same number as what he started with. And the numbers are a little bit off, about 601,000 and change, but it's the same 600,000. So they do ask, like 40 years in the desert, and all you have is 600,000, like no increase. Now, under the age 20, there's a humongous amount of children. That number is not countable. So in that way, there were many more people, but you could just say it's referring to the soldiers. Soldiers still 600,000, or with all the different plagues that took place every time the Jewish people got angry, and we're still at that number 600,000. That's really quite amazing that the Jewish people are still standing after we got angry so many times. It is interesting that when they talk about the family names, so there's a Yud and a Hey. The letter Hey is at the beginning of the family name, and the letter Yud is at the end of the family name, because those letters represent God's name. And God put his name on each family to say that there is, especially after the story we just finished, that the Jewish people were pure. The families were pure. They were not filled with Egyptian children from rapes that you could imagine would have taken place in Egypt, when in truth it didn't happen. So that's what God's putting his name there for. Now it is interesting, in the counting of all the tribes, the tribe of Shimon has shrunk. Amazing. Like, it says 24,000 died in the plague, and that's really from the tribe of Shimon, the 24,000. But if you look at the numbers from the beginning of the book of Numbers till now, the number, I think, is 30,000 plus. As a matter of fact, Shimon's tribe is down to 22,200, when he should have been in the 50,000s plus when he came out of Egypt. So that's a lot of people. So the interesting thing is, so what's this funny number 22,200? Like, why did Shimon have 22,000? Like, if they had a bigger plague, so have 5,000 left. What's this number 22,200? So I saw there's a rule from a verse that God's presence only comes down to a congregation of 22,000 and more. For Shimon to dip below 22,000 is so embarrassing, because now God's presence won't rest on your tribe. That is so embarrassing that God made sure that the tribe at least had 22,000. So when it goes to the numbers, the verse says no one is left from the time of the spies, except for those two, meaning from 20 to 60. Anybody who's 20 to 60. From the time of the spies, they all died in the desert, except for the two spies that did not slander the land. That was Joshua, Yoshua, and Kalev. So you almost see, that means, the 600,000 died, right? So what's one person? What's two people? But the answer is that any single person can have an amazing effect. So I saw this beautiful story. There was a boy, unfortunately, was diagnosed with cancer, and his friends wanted to help, and they would get together every evening, a bunch of his classmates and maybe some other boys, and they said Psalms. And every couple months, they completed the book of Psalms, and they started again. This was however long they spent every night, not so important. And the boy was seeing progress. He had a long way to go, but there was definite progress. And then the summer came. And now it's summer. I see with my own kids. They could be the most studious children ever during the school year, but now it's the summer. My son said last night, I want to make sure that I'm free in case I want to go play. He's not planning on playing, but if he wants to go with friends and play, he does want to be tied down with study partners. It's the summer. Okay. I get it. So the summer came, and every night, the kids are out there playing baseball. And one of these boys, he's up next. And he looks at his watch. And he says, oh no, I got to leave now to get to the Psalm, to the Tehillim group for my friend. But I'm up next. And I'm a good bat. If I get a hit, we'll win the game. And had a dilemma. And he said, that's it. I got to go say Psalms for my friend. I got to go say Tehillim. So he leaves, says, you guys take over. I'm losing my spot. I got to go to the Tehillim group. Anyways, he told his father what happened. And his father said he's so proud of him and it's so beautiful. And the father called the boy with cancer's father and said, I just want you to know what these boys are doing. And I'll tell you the story of my son. And he was up next, and he wanted to get a hit. And instead he came to say, Tehillim, just to make him feel good. So how's your son doing? So the father says, you're not going to believe this. This morning, right? Your story is last night. This morning, the doctors were working on getting my son to walk. One of the things he has to relearn how to walk. And there was a major breakthrough. And I guess he's either sent in the video or brought over to session of the video. And this boy that has cancer, is there with a baseball bat. And the doctor says, run to first. And he takes a couple steps. This boy wasn't walking. Run to second. He takes more steps. Home run. Run to home. In other words, the father says, can you imagine the therapy that worked to get my son to start walking was baseball. That's what your son gave up last night. Your son gave up baseball to pray for my son, and it was baseball that was the therapy that caused my son to walk. That is just totally amazing. So there's a lot of nuances in this Torah portion. And one of them is that it's time for the new leader. Where, as we said, with the end of Moses' life, and Moses says to God, he really wanted his son to take over. So Moses says to God, it's time, my time is almost up. Like, who's the next leader, right? Moses doesn't want to die, and there's no captain of the ship. Right? The Jewish people have to know who is the next leader. So God tells Moses it's going to be Joshua, the one that's always studied, always in your tent, always studying with you, always taking care of the learning. And you have to bless him. As the idea is, you'll put your hand on him and you'll bless him, and he will like get the spirit of God. So it says Moses went ahead and put 2 hands on Joshua to show that I am so happy that you are the one that's going to be the next leader of the Jewish people. So interesting, talking about leaders. So a very interesting story. It's like very timely. If you're reading the news, with all that's going on in Israel, when the country was established, so one of the things was set up was those boys that are studying Torah have a deferment. They're not they don't have to go to the army, but as long as they're studying in school, they have a deferment. Now, by the way, America does the same thing. Even in Vietnam, when there was a draft, but if you were a clergy, if you were going to school to be a priest or a rabbi, a religious leader, so you had a deferment. Every country understands you must take care of your religious leaders. Now, it's true in Israel, there's a lot of people studying. And it's also true that any religious Jew believes that Torah study is more powerful for protecting the Jewish state than anything else. And recently, they changed the law. They withdrew the deferments. They're going to try to start drafting students, and I don't know. It's going to be bad. It's just not. It's an idea that's totally set up just to hurt those Orthodox people. It's not because they need the soldiers, but that's really not for now. But here's a fascinating story. So years after the first Israeli prime minister by the name of David Ben-Gurion, everybody heard of it, David Ben-Gurion, he retired and he moved to a place called Sde Boker. And one time he met a famous person by the name of Shlomo Lorenz. This Shlomo Lorenz was like, he's actually, I don't know, he's not alive anymore, but he wrote a bunch of books about his meetings with all kinds of different Torah leaders and political people. He was a very involved person in the land of Israel. So Rabbi Shlomo greets him, and he asks the prime minister, he says, do you have any regrets? Were there any mistakes that you made when you were prime minister? So he says, yeah. He says, my biggest regret was not removing the deferment, not getting the yeshiva students into the army. I know he agreed at the beginning when the country was started, I should have pulled that whole deferment. So Rabbi Lawrence says, like, so why'd you make this mistake? Like, why did you pull it? So the Lawrence says, I have no idea. So Shlomo says to him as follows. He says, I'll tell you. He says, now you're a regular citizen. You're a regular person. You have your own personal ability to decide right from wrong. But when you're prime minister, you're like a king. And the verse says, the heart of kings are in the hand of God. In other words, when you're a king, you think that you're in control. While in truth, God's in control. And God was not going to let you go ahead and pull that deferment. He just wasn't going to let. So that's really a fascinating thought, that when I'm a regular person and I'm not in control, I could say anything I want. If I was king, I would. But all of a sudden, when you're king, everything changes. Not because you're a wishy-washy person, because God controls kings. They have to do what he wants. They're not regular people anymore. They're responsible, right? Presidents are the same. Anybody should think that the president as a regular person, he would say one thing, becomes president, all of a sudden different things are happening because that's what God wants. Right? So just a very, very fascinating idea. So I wanted to end with one more story. The Torah portion talks about the daughters of Tzlafchad. Who was Tzlafchad? So he was a person that died in the desert, either he was one of the Mapilim, which means he went to try to conquer the land of Israel without Moses and the ark. Others say he did another sin, but he wasn't from the. But he was really a very special person. He has 5 daughters, no sons. So the problem was, at this point, part of the purpose of the census in this week's Torah portion is to know how many pieces the land of Israel has to be chopped up into to start divvying up to families. Now, the census was to help create how we're going to divide up the land. But at this point, for whatever reason, well, a lot of reasons. One is so they should be able to come and get the reward for this part of the Torah. The Jewish people thought only boys inherit, which was pretty standard in those days. Boys inherit, girls don't. So they came to Moses and said, we also want to inherit. So Moses said, let me speak to God. And the rule is, God says, that if there's no boys, the girls inherit. That was the rule. For land in Israel, if there's no boys in the family, then now the girls will inherit. So the idea is, right, that it's not better, worse. It doesn't matter. Whenever we talk about righteous women in the Talmud, they're right, their spirituality is even greater than men, right? We find the Sarah, right? The Torah never negates the spirituality, the importance, the value of women. So interesting, very just fascinating story. Turn of the 21st century, there's a religious city of Elad in Israel. It's a religious city, and a very big city. A lot of Chassidim there. There's 1,000 families there that consider themselves religious Zionists. There's a Yemenite community there. So one of the leaders is Reb Shmuel Zeibold. And he's a mohel, means he circumcises children. So he says over the story, he was once called in to circumcise a child. And the parents recently had come from Russia. So he walks and he sees an old Jewish mother, and she's crying and crying and crying. And he goes to her and he says, like, is there anything I can do to help you? So she says, are you the mohel? Are you going to circumcise my grandson? And he says, yeah. He says, growing up in Russia was hard. I did whatever I could to try to give Jewish values to my daughter. But the fact is she wanted to marry a non-Jewish Russian, and it was killing me. And we moved to Israel, and this Russian followed, and they got married. So the father of my son is not Jewish. So the mohel says, Rabbi Zeibold says, but he's still Jewish. The child is Jewish. The mother's Jewish. The child is Jewish. But you should keep praying for your grandchild. You just keep crying. You just keep praying. It'll help. Anyways, 5 years later, he gets a phone call to do the circumcision on the father. So he says to the grandmother, he says, you see from here that usually the father brings the child into the bris. Here the child brought the father. Sorry, I had to rush up the story, but the music is playing, and I hope you enjoyed it short and sweet. Thank you, of course, for a wonderful sponsor listener. I can't do it without you. Thank you to the production team. We have Al in the back today, and we've left you some food for thought. Until next time, I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson. You've been listening to Let's Talk Torah on NRM Streamcast. Until next time, don't forget to think about it.
There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special things I compile, each one